Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Another day of jury deliberations ending again with no verdict. The Waupaca County double homicide trial will enter its third day of deliberations tomorrow. Tony Hayes is facing 2 murder charges for the deaths of Tana Togstead and Tim Mumbrew, who were found stabbed to death in 1992. Hayes was arrested 30 years later. Samantha Cavalli continues our coverage of the trial. She tells us about the question asked by the jury that could affect the outcome of this case.
The state, the defense, and the families all appearing frustrated Thursday over jury deliberations not coming to a conclusion yet again. Around 10 a.m., Judge Raymond Huber calling the jury into the courtroom to discuss a letter he had received from them, asking how to go about convincing other jurors to make a unanimous decision.
If a juror says, quote, "I've made up my mind and I'm not changing," close quote, is it said juror's task to convince the others of their conclusion?
District Attorney Kat Turner asking about enacting Wisconsin Criminal Jury Instruction 520. This is given to juries that are struggling to reach an agreement or are deadlocked. If enacted, it will help the jury arrive at a verdict and encourage them to engage in open discussions. Though not enacted yet, Judge Huber advising the jury to go back into chambers, saying this is supposed to be a deliberative process.
No one needs to absolutely change. If their minds are made up, they don't need to change. But you should talk, at least among yourselves, and in good faith, and explain why you believe what you believe.
Deliberations will continue sometime tomorrow morning. We will be here awaiting a verdict, and we'll let you know on air and online as soon as it comes down. Reporting in Waupaca County, Samantha Cavalli, Action 2 News.